friend over there that had a used car dealership, and I found this '53 Chevy, cream, and I was look under the hood, you know, I didn't know what I really was looking for, and it cost $600. So Dad went half, and I mean he paid for it, $600. And then when we got home, I went back there and I thought, he'll say, Jay, you take that money for gas and have a good time. He took it. And I said, Mother, he took it. He said, Jay, you all made a bargain.
That's right.
You gave your word that you'd go half with him. Now you stick with it. But he took it.
He didn't give it back.
No.
Well, I'm curious. You went to elementary school, junior high, or was it junior high school then?
At junior high and high school.
Okay, so you went to elementary.
7th, 8th, and 9th was considered junior high.
And then
10th, 11th, 12th, high school.
But it wasn't for you, Dad.
No.
Interesting.
He
Okay.
finished in 3 years, didn't you, Gene? Finished high school, in college.
No, I finished college in 3 years.
Oh.
Doris finished high school in 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So to keep up with her, I finished college in 3 years.
In 3 years? Okay.
Applied to medical school.
I'm curious, what do both of you remember about elementary and junior high school, those years, in school especially?
I can name you my teachers.
Yeah,
Really?
Ethel Dawson was one of mine.
Miss Scroggins, and Miss Burton, Miss Hill, Miss Thompson, and her husband was the shop teacher. She was in the 6th grade, I think. And Miss Serber, and I forget the name of the coaches coached.
Right. Interesting.
Taught history. And but I'll tell you one on Jean and Doris, when they were dating, the Waters that lived in Ada had a pond by their house. And we went down there, we was fishing. And Doris had her line out there, and Jean, I don't think Jean did, but I did. And Doris got a bite. That cork went down, and Jean said, bring it up. Boy, Doris pulled that thing. I expected only Jaws to be next to that hook. She pulled that fish out, and Jean said, Doris, Waters, Douthit, what are you doing? But that fish landed in a tree behind it. But the Waters were very gracious people. And George, what was her name?
Georgia Lee.
Georgia Lee.
Yep.
And his name was
JB.
Now what did JB stand for?
James something.
James Boyd.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
James Boyd. They were, and he built the. He manicured the front yard where Jean and Doris were married, and he built the arch, the arbor, I guess you'd call it, for them to stand.
Okay.
And
He was a very handy man.
You know, he built the house too.
there wasn't anything he couldn't do. I don't
Yeah, he
think.
did beautiful stone masonry.
Yeah, and he taught school there in Ada.
And also did a barber shop on Saturday.
Oh, he did. I didn't know that.
Well, Dad, didn't Granddad put his siblings through college by barbering?
No, Dad put his siblings through by his working.
Oh,
Yeah. I asked Dad how he did it. He had Jean in medical school, Joe at OBU, Jack at OBU, and Jimmy went to OU. And I asked Dad, I said, Dad, how, on a banker's side, wasn't too good then compared to
what is it now?
maybe today. I don't know what a banker makes. But anyway, he said, tithe? And I said, tithe? Tithing? He said, yes. He said, I gave 10% to the Lord, and the Lord gave me back 100%.
Well, his tithing story began when he was,
Do you want to follow up?
a neighbor hired him to chop cotton all day long and gave him 10 dimes. Of course, he's a good friend of Dad. So Dad brought it and put the 10 dimes, showed to Granddad. And Granddad said that this is the Lord's, the rest is yours. And that was in 2001 when I started tithing.
Well, we've kind of talked a little bit about around this idea of your parents' faith, but can you kind of describe a little bit about what their faith meant to them and how it was translated to you all as growing up?
Well, Doris had extreme, I used to say she had faith like a cow, just accepted everything. And of course, she was a mission volunteer long before I was. I was going to join church and became a Christian at 9. And then we started dating because her pastor was now my pastor. And when our pastor's wife died, they came over and I met them then. Then we were in summer school together. And then we started dating, went to Falls Creek, the Baptist Assembly. It's really thrilling to hear 3,000 or 4,000 people singing the old songs. And so she had already been committed to missionary work. And so I went to Ridgecrest one year, and they gave a call for missionary service, and I said, no living in grass huts across halfway around the world. But then when I went to Falls Creek with Doris, and she was such an avid, so I said, but if I'm going to stick with her, I better sign up for the missions. So I went to the missionary volunteer, and then after we got married, I went to medical school, and the Lord just opened the doors. First there were about 800 applications for 100 in medical school, but I said, Lord, if you want me to do that, be a medical missionary. So I was accepted, went through medical school, and then my junior year, Congress passed the doctor draft bill because the physicians weren't flocking to the military. So they passed this bill. So when I was a junior in medical school, I had to sign up for the draft. And so the next year, I could either be drafted or what. So I volunteered to do a surgery residency. So I was deferred from military service for 6 years. But in the meantime, I had OB-GYN rotation, fell in love with it, and switched my specialty from surgery to OB-GYN. And I got this curt letter in midway between my OB-GYN residency, internship, said I could either, for the DOD, Department of Defense, I could even volunteer or be drafted because I was not fulfilling my surgery slot. So I began looking around. Earlier, I'd been in the Navy Reserve because Dad was president of the draft board, and he advised me to sign up so I could finish college. So I did in the reserve for 2 or 3 years, no active duty, no nothing, but I was still on the reserve list. And then when I went to medical school, then after I was drafted, I began looking around for places in their services where my family could go with me. Most of them were unaccompanied tours. So I picked the Air Force, joined the Air Force Reserve, and began going to Carswell Air Force Base, where my chief of OB-GYN was chief out there, and if I could have stayed there, I could have finished up my residency requirements. So I applied to the Air Force, got in the Air Force Reserve, started working out there, trying to make myself known. And then finally came the time that I had to pick. So I picked the Air Force, and the recruiter said, no problem if you want to stay in Texas. So I put Texas, 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 and got Fairbanks, Alaska. And like used car salesmen, don't trust them. But anyway, it was a wonderful experience from a Christian standpoint. We were active in the First Baptist Church there. I was ordained deacon, and it was, we were both active in the Sunday school and everything. And in Alaska, in the winter especially, if you're doing baptism, you had to get the water heated 24 hours before, and then let it fill in the baptistry slowly. So one time the preacher was preaching, one of the deacons tugged him and said, "Look, the water's about to overflow the baptistry." It was warm. Another interesting instance, when Jack was baptized during high school, and you know, the church talking, and all when they silent, hear Jack's voice said, "Boy, that's cold."
So Jay, what do you remember about your parents and their religious upbringing of you?
Well, thinking back to Falls Creek, Dad would take his 2-week vacation, and he would kind of be the custodian of the campground, and Mother would cook. She was the camp.
Oh.
And at that time, they stayed 2 weeks down in Falls Creek instead of, I think, 5 days now. And so I was going to Falls Creek when I was about 6 years old. And that's a fond memory. And like Gene said, 4,000 or 5,000 voices singing God's praise in song is, it raised the hair on the back of your neck. It really would. It was a blessing, God's blessing. But I was baptized when I was about 9 also. And they would talk to me about Christ, but you know, you lead by example.
That's right.
Mere words, you know, they come and go, but the example that my mother and dad set before me gave me a goal to follow. And that can never be taken away from me.
Well, my experience in